because I think the most interesting story of the night actually happened in Las Vegas.
2 seconds left, final play of the game. Ridder on a straight drop now, up in the pocket, going to hang it for the end zone, and it is intercepted by Atlanta to end the game. Holy smokes. Your heart's in your throat when Ridder throws it in the end zone. And Jesse Bates has come away with the interception to end the ball game.
It's an interception. That's the end of the game.
Of course it was Jesse Bates who got the game-winning play. That's what Jesse Bates does. Falcons win 15-9. That was West Durham on WZGC. And what you could hear there was a sigh of relief, not just from Mr. Durham, but from Kirk Cousins, from Raheem Morris. The embarrassment that would have come from losing to Desmond Ridder, scoring 2 touchdowns in the last 3 minutes of a game you were leading 15-3, but just looked awful on offense throughout, would have been enough to power sports talk radio in Atlanta for a couple of weeks. Nick, I wasn't expecting to lead with this game, but I think the Kirk Cousins situation is at such a code red that even though they won the game, I really am thinking they're going to bench Kirk Cousins or they should bench Kirk Cousins. I'm actually feeling like it may happen. What was your takeaway just watching him play tonight against the Raiders?
He looked like he has for most of the last month, which is a stretch in which he's thrown 0 touchdowns and 8 interceptions entering tonight. And he doesn't look comfortable. He looks hesitant. He looks like the pass rush, which has been in his face a lot this year, has started to mess with him mentally. His passes are not coming out with quite as much zip as they did before. A lot of downward trajectory passes. Just doesn't look like a quarterback who feels as if or plays as if he commands the salary that he does or that he should be out there. And for a Falcons team that is very much still in the race in the NFC South, I don't think that they can waste any more time. I think we talked about this 2 weeks ago on our Sunday recap show, in which we basically agreed at the time that, hey, he's not helping them, he's hurting them. And they won the game tonight, but it wasn't because of him, save for one pass to Drake London. I mean, there was a lot left to be desired, including the fact that they trust him to throw on 3rd down when they could have ran the ball and drained 40 more seconds off the clock. Because, as I've often said, the one thing you can't afford to do is give Desmond Ridder a minute 50 to go the length of the field. And they did that.
They got in position to throw 2 not quite Hail Marys from the 30. You're right. They could have run the ball. I was actually surprised they let Kirk Cousins throw the ball. I believe it was, a 3rd and 9. They're past midfield. The first down wins the game, but you're under 2 minutes to go. The Raiders don't have any timeouts. If you run the ball, it takes it down to about 120. And one of the reasons I thought they would just run the ball there is they didn't let Kirk Cousins do that much throughout the final 3 quarters of this game. He threw for 112 yards. He went 11 of 17. He took 3 sacks against the Raiders in the first half of this game. And yeah, the pressure was in his face, but a lot of it, and Dan Orlovsky and Louis Riddick were pointing it out throughout the broadcast. He was just late, and on that play where they did trust him, where they said, you know what, you are our franchise quarterback. If you were playing at a normal level, we would let you throw this ball. He was a beat late, and that ball could have easily been intercepted. And that play was what put me over the top that I think a change is coming. Now, it's stupid to make predictions on a Monday night podcast. I put this out there on Blue Sky, and everyone pushes back and just says it's so hard to get a rookie up to speed. And Charles McDonald, who's a Falcons fan, one of the best writers, podcasters out there, is like, Falcons would never do it. They're too afraid. And I get that, but I felt a little better after listening to Raheem Morris after the game. Here he is answering a couple questions about Cousins.
He's got to play better. And, obviously you got to go back, you got to be able to look at everything. But, he wants to play better. He's got to play better. We got to find a way to get him to play better. And obviously we'll get to work tomorrow. And that's a part of our process, right? You go, you look at the tape, you review with the people that needs to be reviewed with. We get all the coordinators in the room. We'll talk with everybody. And we got to play better at the quarterback position.
So part B to that, if he can't, are you prepared to replace him with Michael Penix?
We got everybody in our roster for a reason, right? We got so much to get better at. And those things will always be discussed. That's just the nature of the beast in football. It's just so heavily talked about it at the quarterback position because there's only one guy out there. So for us, man, our mentality is to find a way to win the next game. That's just the mentality that we're going to have.
Ooh, I'm surprised people are making a bigger deal about this. I mean, we draft guys for a reason. He was pretty definitive that Kirk's our guy after the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And that to me spoke differently. Now he's in the emotion of the moment, and maybe once he gets back and watches the tape, and the tape's not going to be kind, but once he realizes he has to start game planning, maybe he feels different. But that to me was Raheem Morris leaving the door wide open to go to Michael Penix here at 7-7, even though they're in the playoff race, only one game back.
It's a drastic change in tone from what he sounded like 2 weeks ago, which is when somebody presented that possibility, he quickly shut it down and was like, no, Kirk's our quarterback. We're not thinking about that. Now he, like you said, is leaving the door wide open, and rightfully so. Kirk Cousins finished 11 of 17 for 112 yards, a touchdown, and a pick tonight. And it could have been worse. It could have been 2 picks. It could have been much worse, and that's already a bad line. That's not a guy that you pay the amount of money that they're paying him. And they are in a playoff race. They have to seize this opportunity while they have it. Now, their offensive play calling, not really inspired. Bijan Robinson had a really nice night, which kind of kept them afloat offensively, but they can't finish drives. They haven't finished drives for weeks, and it starts at quarterback. It's not hard to see. The average eye, the average football fan can see what's going on. Kirk Cousins is not playing up to a starting quarterback standard, much less a franchise quarterback standard. And with the playoffs on the line, you have to consider all options so as to not waste these last 3 weeks with an opportunity in front of you.
So I'm counting they had 7 possessions in the second half. I mean, that was the Raiders, sorry. They got 7 as well. They got 6 points out of it. The 2 drives that they got went for 15 yards and 23 yards. If you did not watch this game, and I don't blame you if you didn't, you wouldn't realize that the Falcons defense and special teams were completely dominant.
Yes.
They blocked 2 punts in the game, setting Falcons up in plus territory. The 1 touchdown came in plus territory that the block punt set up. They blocked an extra point. The Falcons defense had 4 sacks. The Falcons defense forced 2 turnovers. The Falcons defense scored 2 points with the safety. It was all Falcons defense, and that's what I'm talking about. And Raheem Morris knows that. And you said this performance has been coming for weeks in terms of the touchdown interception. That's right. But I actually understood them starting him in this game because I thought last week he played quarterback. He looked like Kirk Cousins. Like Troy Aikman said, like he was making quick decisions. He pushed the ball down the field. He threw 2 awful interceptions, but they were moving the ball up and down the field, and he had a number of really good throws. Tonight, he played scared. This was actually his worst game of the season by far in terms of EPA per play and success rate. Their success rate was way worse than Desmond Ridder and the Raiders, who have no talent. And Ridder just got there and looked terrible and was actually under more pressure than Kirk Cousins was in this game. And those sacks were like knocking him back into farther field goal range. It was just rough. And it's not even about just making the playoffs, Shook, because I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. It's like, what do we stand for? Are we trying to do our best to win games? We have this kid. We got the Giants next week, Washington and Carolina. Like, they could win all 3 of those games and hope the Bucs stub their toe. But either way, Mike Tomlin says, don't live in your fears. What would Mike Tomlin do, Nick Shook? Mike Tomlin would make the tough decision. He would go to Russell Wilson. He would have a feel of his team that us on the outside didn't have. Like, go to Michael Penix.
Yeah, I mean, I do think about that. The Tomlin example is actually kind of good because Tomlin did the reverse. He went from a younger guy to a veteran.
Sure.
At a time when they didn't need to, when they were winning football games. But he felt like it was the time to figure out what they had, and it's paid off for them for the large part. This would be the opposite. This would be going from a veteran to a rookie in a key spot. But like Raheem said, you draft guys for a reason. You drafted Michael Penix where you drafted him, above where you probably thought, most people thought he was going to get drafted, because of the long-term plan and the curiosity of, can he be a guy who helps us out quicker than we think? Yeah, we just gave Kirk Cousins all this money, but he's also coming off an Achilles injury. He's not mobile. He scrambled tonight for like the second time this year. It didn't look good. It looked like Tom Brady when he was running back in the day, and not like young Tom Brady, older Tom Brady. And so you come to this point now where it's like, why did we spend that pick if we're just going to let him not really rot on the bench, but just sit there and watch us as we continue to struggle? I think the frustrations tonight match what you're saying. The boiling point. It's now boiling over because they know, they have hard evidence that Kirk Cousins is not powering their offense to a victory. Like, they had needed Bijan Robinson to go for 125 tonight to be there. They needed the defense to block 2 punts and pick off Desmond Ridder once and then twice to end the game. And even then, they shouldn't have even been in that spot if they had a quarterback who was capable of finishing a game, but they don't. That's not a winning football team. And if you feel like your defense is playing well enough, which it is, and your defense has been better in the pass rush in the last few weeks, then you need to have, equal production on the offensive side from Kirk Cousins. They're just not getting it.
And thank you for pointing out Bajan, who went for 125 yards on the ground tonight, has looked fantastic, went over 1,000 rushing yards. Algier goes for 43, so they run for 168 rather. Kirk Cousins did not add to the rushing total because even though he had that scramble, had a couple, did he have kneel downs? No, but he somehow
He had
lost
to recover like
yards.
a botched snap at one time. It had to fall
right,
on it.
that was right, a bad snap.
Yeah.
So he ended up with 0 yards on 3 carries, which gives him the hilarious stat line on the season, 23 rushes, 0 yards.
Yes.
Not negative, not one. That's hard to do. I know there's a lot of kneel downs in there, but 23 rushes, 0 yards. I think it's over. And they drafted Michael Penix. I supported the pick at the time. I said, because I think quarterbacks are so hard to get. It's a long-term play. They would not have expected it to be a short-term play like now, but the running game's playing well. The defense since the bye, I think, is playing well. I know Troy Aikman said they got, beat up last week. I keep saying Troy Aikman because it's Monday Night Football, and that's, who I'm used to, but it was actually Orlovsky and Riddick in his interview with Scott Van Pelt afterwards. I actually thought they played very competitively on defense last week until the fourth quarter, where their head got caved in. But if you watch the Falcons defense all year, it was like, okay, they're pressuring Sam Darnold. They're making them pull off crazy plays. They actually were better, and they were very good the week before. They're playing better on defense. So you're letting your team down, I believe, if you don't make that change.
Raheem's a defensive guy, and his unit is performing. Like, how can you waste that? Given that this is your second shot at a head coaching opportunity, your first season there, you got off to a fast start. You got to capitalize. It's not about like hurting feelings or protecting feelings. It's about winning football games. It's a cold business. Sometimes you got to make these tough decisions in these spots in order to preserve your job and get the most out of your team.
And I actually think the future does matter, that it's not just about winning games, that you wouldn't make the change if you didn't think that it's pretty realistic that Michael Penix gives you a better chance to win.
Yeah,
because like an average rookie quarterback at this point would give you a better chance to win. But I think it's okay to think about the development of it all. You could win all 3 of these games and not even make the playoffs. That Kirk's playing that bad that the bonus of developing and seeing your guy for a little bit is worth it.
Let's look back to the Eagles. When they drafted Jalen Hurts, they made the switch to him. What happened? The rest is history. Could be a similar parallel there.
Let's go. Okay, I'm not going to spend much time on this game. Falcons fans, yes, your 4-game streak is over. It feels better to win than to lose, absolutely. Although I'm introducing the concept, first time I've heard this at least, this is a moral loss. Moral victories. People always talk about, we don't count moral victories. Do you count moral losses? Because it's like this was a win that felt morally to me like a loss when it's 1 score against Desmond Ridder. And you heard Kirk Cousins after the game on the with the sideline reporter, it was Laura Rutledge, just he didn't sound happy at all. Ridder in this offense had about 112 yards until the very end. Give a little love to Caden Ellis, Rororo, my favorite name in football, had some good pressure. They were playing a little better on defense, and they made this Raiders offense look bad. It's going to be a tough watch, I think, with Ridder down the stretch here. Sincere McCormick, who's played great for them at running back, got hurt during the game. That was disappointing. Ridder had a couple nice passes, but more often was not on target and did not help out Brock Bowers' fantasy owners tonight, as the Raiders maintained their strength of victory edge over the Giants and are right now the number 1 overall pick for what it's worth. But that's up in the air. They could lose out and still lose that pick. It depends on opponent strength and everything if both those teams lose out.
Tankathon, very much in full effect right now. It was funny, the Raiders, they're a bad football team, and Antonio Pierce's expression on that final drive in which Ridder is checking down relentlessly because he's afraid to take a shot until the final 4 throws. He's just checking down.
They made a nice one to Jacoby. He had a couple nice throws, but he just.
And then they get up to the line and they get a delay game penalty, and then they show a shot of Pierce on the sideline, and he's just got this look on his face you got to be kidding me. Really, you got that? That's the Raiders in 2024.
Oh my God, they had this drive early where they were actually moving the ball, and then they line up. They set up a Jacoby Myers pass, and Jacoby Myers takes a sack. So then it's 2nd and 20. Then they go -4 or -5 or -6, something like that, on a run. Then it was 2nd and 26. Ritter hasn't even thrown the ball here. Then they're 3rd and 26. They decide, well, let's just run the ball and be safe. They hand it off and they fumbled the ball. That was Alexander Madison on like what was supposed to be a safe run. And I'm thinking like, poor Ritter. I mean, he's missing throws as it is, but he wasn't even involved in this sequence. And that's why I think in part this game had to be so frustrating for the Falcons, because they really did dominate on 2 units of the game in terms of their defense and in terms of their special teams with their block punts and some returns, like in their coverage units. It was all good for them other than the offense. But they do escape 7-7